Aaron Rodgers is the clear leader. He is the former MVP multiple times. He's the guy with the incredible QB rating. He's a Super Bowl winner. So here he is. He comes into this franchise and brings, a level of credibility, a level of experience. Breece Hall is young. Garrett Wilson's young. Very young core. Guys on defense are young. But there's Aaron Rodgers. And so I saw this headline from ProFootballTalk.com that I thought was interesting. And so it says, Aaron Rodgers is pushing his teammates to perform at a high level. And we know that this is the case for leaders. This is what leaders do on the football field. And so Robert Saleh, head coach of the Jets, he said this about Rodgers' leadership. I've heard stories of Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, not to compare them, but it's the same thing. The expectation and the standard is high. As a quarterback, he's trying to operate at a certain level of efficiency, which means people around him need to be efficient at the same level. When he's not feeling that as a group's leader and voice, he voices his opinion. And so Rodgers has come in and is vocal about what's going on, what needs to happen. And part of that, let me read this. This is what Mike Florio on ProFootballTalk.com wrote. The best quarterbacks not only play at a high level, but also hold their teammates fiercely accountable to do the same. It's one thing to hear it from the coaches. It's another to hear it from someone who's out there putting in the work. Rodgers is trying to make everyone around him want to get the absolute most out of what they have. And so I think this is extremely valuable when a quarterback and leaders on the team are willing to be the vocal leader when it comes to pointing things out. Hey, that's not going to work. That we got to fix that, change that. Also, they have to be willing to encourage their teammates. Say, hey, that's good. Yes, keep going. And so, we talk sometimes about, how vocal should you be as leaders and that kind of thing, and the quiet leaders lead by example. Yes, that's part of it. But there comes a point too, and there is a key part to the role, especially for a guy like Aaron Rodgers who's trying to change the whole culture with the Jets, as you know, Ridge. I mean, he's got to turn things around. He's got to be able to point things out and say, hey, that's not winning football. He knows what winning football is. He's got the standard, just like Tom Brady, just like Peyton Manning. They knew what it took, and they wanted to bring other players up with them to be on, at least the best level that they could be on, knowing that, hey, you are talented. You can do this. But that move, not coming off the ball quick enough, all those kinds of things, that's not going to work.
Well, I give an example of that I thought was really interesting this past couple of days. So we've got a second-year center, Joe Tippmann. Super talented guy, had a solid rookie year, but he's young. And so you can imagine how intimidating that would be. You're this young kid who's just getting used to being an NFL player, and now you're snapping for Aaron Rodgers. So in the midst of training camp, he kind of got the yips. So he's snapping it over Rodgers' head. And as we all know as football fans, it's a drive killer. You snap it over the quarterback's head, you're just trying to cover the ball, not get it recovered by the other team, but you're punting. And so this has been going on through training camp. They've been working with him. And the other day I just thought it was interesting because obviously Rodgers is trying to pull the best out of him and trying to encourage him and challenge him. But the other day I saw a clip of practice was starting the next day, and first thing that happened was Rodgers came up and gave him a big hug and was just encouraging him like, dude, you've got this. Like, I'm not trying to draw something out that's not there. You've got it. Now we just got to, dial it in and be confident and be comfortable. But I thought that was like a really great example of like, that picture, the older, more experienced veteran, this young, kind of nervous, but still has it. And I think, it's a life principle, man. You know what I mean? You have these opportunities to, again, check people where you need to in love, but in love. So there's that moment where you come together and go, dude, we're teammates. This isn't me trying to, you know what I mean? So I thought it was a great example of what that looks like.
Absolutely. And I think that's the key in all this too, is that they are teammates with the same goal.
Right.
They are pushing forward to say, hey, how do we maximize what we've got on this roster, and let's go win as much as we're capable of. But in order to do that, we got to keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
I got to raise the bar here. Here is the standard, and we can't leave anybody behind. I'm bringing you with me, right? Aaron Rodgers saying, hey, you're coming with me. Let's go. And so I think a part of this too, two things. One, in this quote, it's one thing for a coach and there is a clear role for a coach. We can talk about that. That's a whole separate podcast. But today it's talking about teammates in this together. So Rodgers is in the huddle, right? He's on the field. And hopefully he's healthy. No longer on the sideline either. Because you talk about the impact he had on the sideline. Well, it's different when he's in it with these guys. So the day in, day out, hey, we're in this together. But part of that too is Aaron Rodgers, even though he's going into his 20th season, he still has to be open to his teammates pointing things out. Hey,
absolutely.
Hey, Aaron, hey, you missed the ball there. I was open. You didn't see me. And so, that's got to be tough for younger guys sometimes. But if they're in this together, Rodgers can't say, "Oh, I've got all the answers. I'm perfect out here." And no, he's going to miss the ball sometimes, or he's going to have the wrong read. And Mike from upstairs, is going to have to say, "Yo, I was open in the corner of the end zone. You got to find me."
The humility is really important. And again, another great example of that, him and Garrett Wilson. I don't know if you guys saw this report the other day, but you get into that phase where the season's yet to start, and any story is a story just because we're waiting for stuff. So him and Garrett Wilson had this, back and forth on the sideline, and onlookers that were attending the practice were like, man, it looks like they're fighting and they're arguing. But I thought it was interesting. Again, after the fact, Aaron was talking through the fact that he's like, man, we're getting better. But what I thought was really interesting was, again, you talk about the humility. So Aaron's this is 20th season, 3 or 4-time MVP, Super Bowl champion, so all the accolades. And Garrett Wilson's kind of a young pup. But it was cool to me that Aaron said, like, honestly, Garrett's got a whole book of stuff that I've got to learn.
That's right.
Because, you think about it. Aaron's never been a receiver a day in his life.
It's true.
And here's this young kid who's like, hey, man, the game's constantly changing. Here's what he's learning. Here's what, you know what I mean? So I think it was a really cool example of, like, you never arrive at a place of, like, I've got the answers. I've got it all figured out. You know what I mean? And so you always have to have that posture of being a lifelong learner and being receptive to, like, hey, man, just like it's my responsibility to, in love, call somebody out when something's not right, it's also an opportunity for me to always have a heart that says, yeah, if you've got something that will help me to, live better, look more like Jesus, do something that would be beneficial, then I would be a fool to cross my arms and not receive that.
That's right. That's pride.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think for Rodgers, even throughout his career, I think sometimes he's had a tough time connecting with certain teammates. And so he's had to grow and mature in that way too, and know, when to speak up, how to speak up, be an encourager too, while also pointing things out. And so I don't know exactly where he stands with all of that, but just as the outside looking in, I believe those things are important. And in order for the Jets and any team for that matter, like, you've got to have that right balance of, hey, I'm in this with you. I can encourage you. I can challenge you. I can point things out. You do the same for me. We hold each other accountable. And one of the things that used to annoy me with Aaron Rodgers is him just going off to the side or being quiet or just holding things in. Yeah. That's not the answer. That's why I always loved Tom Brady, because you knew exactly where he stood. And I've been watching the Dynasty about the Patriots. You probably hate the Patriots.
I lived the Dynasty on the wrong end.
You lived on the wrong end. But some of the principles of how Brady, would bring guys up and challenge guys and point things out, there's a lot to learn there. So with all that said, and you've alluded to it, this translates so well to our own lives. And this parallels our life as followers of Jesus, especially as leaders and those of us that maybe have been following Jesus for a long time. We've got the 20-year veteran experience. We want to bring people up with us to say, hey, here's the standard. Here's the standard of excellence. Here's what it means to live a life that is holy and pleasing to God. And so we have to be willing to voice that and be willing to point things out for other people, to encourage people. Hey, man, that's not who you are anymore. This is what Jesus actually says. This is God's word. Let me help you with this. And you take them off to the side. And sometimes, just like we see in football, there could be a little conflict. And guess what? That's called iron sharpens iron. There's the sparks start to fly, right? But you're growing, you're changing. Things are heading in the right direction. And again, we're teammates. As followers of Jesus, we're on this team together. And so we are in this together. We are on the field. We are in the action. We're in the huddle together. And so we look around and say, hey, man, I see this. I saw this on the last play. That's not going to work. You got to change. That's not what God's word says. Or I've got experience. I've seen the downside to making those decisions. Not going to work. And so we have to be able to build people up and help and point things out along the way.